Almost there, and then we've got this chapter sorted. We go to chapter 7. More people are joining us. Welcome, everybody. It's almost weekend again. I'm not sure why. This is only a 4-day week, but I'm more tired than a normal. A normal 5-day week. I don't know why. Maybe it's the weekend that just put some brakes on and broke my speed or something. Let's go to where we left off, and I think if we, those unfortunately who couldn't make the session on Wednesday or on Tuesday morning, we'll just write it off as a sort of part of the learning process. I think we had a look at the different perceptions, and I'll recap that now. The different perceptions that customers have, and how important it is for marketers to understand that people will have different perceptions, and because people have different perceptions, it's going to impact on their decision-making process, which is something we'll obviously address in greater detail in other chapters. But perception is very much based, and I think we concluded that the whole process of perception is based on many things, but it also is primarily based on experience, your own personal experience. So the perceptual process is actually a very popular section of the work to be assessed in exams and tests. So this is a very important section. The 4 steps or stages, if we can call it that, in the perceptual process is what we'll be looking at the moment. It starts with the exposure, as we said, stimulating the senses of the consumer, the smell, the taste, the touching, the hearing. Those are all senses that are exposed to your message as a marketer addressed at the consumer. The exposure itself doesn't mean it's going to lead to a sale. It catches your attention, and then how you interpret it is also going to then play a final role in your decision to buy or not to buy. So those are the 4, and then obviously you call on your memory if you have bought this product before, and previous experiences come in in that particular stage number 4, before you make your final decision. At this point, people, I know that there have been many of you, before we continue, at this point, and I will send out, and I have said previously, I'm going to send announcements out about your assignment as soon as I have resolved the challenge. And Zaska, I was in the process of replying to your email this morning when I was interrupted by a colleague in the staff room because we had to attend to an emergency. But the long and the short is, people, I've spent time yesterday with our technical people. We couldn't resolve the issue. I spent time this morning again with somebody on a higher level of technical skill, and we couldn't sort it out. She was also stumped. And then I called on Canvas support. They suggested the solution, but unfortunately I've been in classes ever since, and I couldn't. I just dropped the email, said this is what needs to be done according to Canvas support to fix the problem. I'm not sure if it's been fixed, but I can only, obviously, when this class is finished, is done. Everything else is in place. I'm very confident that we sort of one period after we finish this one away from resolving the issue of Turnitin on your assignments. So please bear with me. I know you've been great, very patient, and I'm very grateful for that. I'll attend to it immediately when this class is finished, and I will post an announcement this afternoon on the outcome, and I'm pretty confident that we would have resolved everything. It sort of, I got to a stage where there was an access denied message like that keeps on repeating itself to me. And that's, as I said, we are really making a big effort to resolve this issue. So don't stress about it. I will post an announcement this afternoon to you guys regarding the assignments, and please share this message with those students who are not attending the session today, and we'll take it from there. But again, I'm very grateful for the patience that you've shown so far. Thank you very much. Any questions, anybody at this stage, before we start with the 4 stages of the perceptual process?
Hi, sir. I have a question.
Yes, of course, Larissa.
So I haven't submit my video to Canvas, like in the studio thing.
Yes.
And then I realized, but I can do that without needing to send my assignment through Turnitin. So
Yes.
will I be, like, will points be deducted because I haven't submitted it yet?
No, none of you, and I said some of you have submitted, some of you have not submitted. And the worst case scenario is that we're going to request you to resubmit through the new page. However, nobody will in any form be penalized. It's not any of your faults. It's technical issues on our side with you that we are figuring out. So if you have submitted already, I might just request you to please resubmit through the new page, but that's it. Nothing else is going to affect you negatively at all. No.
Thank you, sir.
Pleasure, Larissa. Any other questions regarding the assignment, people? Can we park that? Good. Oh yes, maybe another question? Not? Okay. Right, people, exposure is the first stage in the perceptual process, and it refers to the extent to which a person takes cognizance of a particular stimuli via the senses, or a sense or combination of senses. It doesn't always have to be necessarily through you don't necessarily have to receive the stimuli. It could be that it's in the printed version, for instance, an ad in a magazine or a newspaper, for instance. But exposure is where everything starts. And as I said previously, it is not necessarily an indication that because you've been exposed to the message that the marketer has sent out, that it will result in a sale. There is a lot that still needs to happen before that actually, or that particular decision is taken. And the reason for that is because the exposure leads to paying attention to it, and then we also know that individual or customers only pay attention to these things that's relevant to them. You have experienced this before. The scenario that I've sketched there for you is that you could be in a class. Let's say, for instance, you had a bad evening. Your neighbor's dog barked the whole night. I mean, you actually only got to sleep very late into the night, and then obviously you didn't hear your alarm go off, so you actually overslept. You were late for class. You actually had to write a test today, and now everything is just snowballed, and it's you're not in a good frame of mind. You're obviously very stressed, and you're tired. But you also know that it's very important to write a test because you need a good mark for this test to actually pass the module or to pass your course. Now, all of these things, the individual, that's you, and the state of mind that you are in, the fact that you are tired and haven't slept, the stimulus itself, and then also, let me just admit Ashley as well. Welcome, Ashley. And then the situation that you find yourself in. Those are all things that affect how much attention you pay to a particular stimuli. For instance, you could now, because of that, in your class. You can't focus and concentrate on your exam that you're writing because you are tired and stressed. So that's the situation. The stimuli were all the factors that got you into the state that you're in. Therefore, those three components, the individual, the stimulus itself, and the situation combined is affects how you pay attention. The individual itself, as I have said previously, but we can repeat this. Customers would more likely be aware of a stimuli that relates to their current needs. If you have recently bought a new car, you would not be interested in any advertisements or commercials about cars. If, however, you are still looking for a new car and you want to buy a new car, you will pay a lot more attention to ads and commercials about cars that's available. So the attention that you as an individual pay very much is determined by your current circumstances and need. Your interest or your need is the primary individual characteristic that influences the attention. Are you interested in the product that is being offered? Do you have a need for that at the moment? If you don't, you're probably not going to pay attention to that particular message that goes out, and therefore there will be no, although you've been exposed, you won't pay attention to that particular stimulus. Now, the stimulus itself, the characteristics of the stimulus plays a very important role. And there is, the more unique a particular stimulus is, the more noticeable it will be, and obviously the greater attention you pay to it. That's why a combination of the size of a commercial, for instance, in a newspaper. It's very popular in a newspaper if you really want to get the attention that you do a full page ad. Your retail shops like your Food Lovers Market and Pick and Pay and Spar and those, they usually have these additional pages that they insert in the newspaper. The colors that are used, where you position it, if it's not a full page one, or maybe it is a full page one, but it's actually stuck away somewhere in the middle. Recently, I think many have used an extra outside cover of the newspaper. You still see the main, the newspaper's name on it, and you also see the main headings of the news, but the front and the back, the rest of it is actually covered with an advert from a particular supplier. And then also the use of discounts and stuff like that. People fall for that trap more regularly. I think they probably won't as much nowadays because of the state of the economy, because there's not a lot of money available out there to spend, or a larger portion of the population don't have as much to spend as they did maybe a year ago. Having said that, I think this morning on the radio I heard that the new list, Forbes brought out a new list of billionaires, dollar billionaires, and I think China was the one country that have produced the most billionaires. I think it's up to 100 billionaires in China currently, adding 53 new billionaires in the last year to get to the number of 100. But in general, people haven't got a lot of money available, and it's always nice to have a buy one get one free, or to have a discount, regardless on what the item is. But people sometimes, as a result of that particular discount that is offered, they pay more attention to that ad. It's still no guarantee that they're going to purchase, but it definitely has an impact on the decision that they eventually will take. And let's look at the situation. The situation in which the individual find themselves will also affect the stimuli. As we said previously, if you walk through the desert and you haven't had food or drink for a couple of days, and somebody offers you something that's not food or drink, it's not of a great significance to you, and you won't pay too much attention to it at that stage, because that's not really where your need lies at that moment. Then also background noise, your time pressure, objects that move, all of these things play a role in drawing your attention. If we take an example, for instance, of a waiter that's in a very fine five-star cuisine restaurant where the ambience is very relaxed and there's soft music playing in the background, that person is going to be less stressed and more friendly with the customers. And you can actually pay greater attention to getting the order correct, and maybe even offering them something extra in the service because of the environment. But if you're in a spur where you're a waiter and everything happens fast and you actually can't wait for the table to be cleared so the next people can come in, it's very noisy. The music is loud, but it's a different environment. Similarly, if we use an example of a policeman in a police station, you expect a policeman to be in a police station. But if there's a policeman at a school and you're at that school and here all of a sudden a policeman arrives, people pay attention to it because policemen are normally not at schools. So there must be a reason why they're there. So you pay attention to that. But you pay less attention to a policeman in a police station when you walk in because he's expected to be there. Well, that's where they operate from. Very often, the blind test, as they call it, is a very good method to use, and I can recommend that you watch that video at the bottom. I think I've mentioned it in class because it was a rival. It was a rival series of commercials between Santam and Nando's. We know that competitive advertising is not permitted in South Africa, but they are not competing with each other because they're not offering the same product. They just actually had a feud between the different commercials and the layout of commercials that was used. But it's quite interesting. Have a look at that video. It puts a lot of paying attention to detail into perspective. The third step that follows after you've been exposed and now you have paid attention to those stimuli that is relevant to you and your need and situation at this particular point, is that you now have to interpret and put meaning to this particular message that has been sent out. How do you react to a very nice smell? You walk into a mall, you can actually smell you can smell people, a restaurant that's preparing food, and all of a sudden you're tempted. It doesn't mean that you now all of a sudden say, oh, it doesn't immediately make you hungry. It makes you think that you are hungry. But it could also be that at that point you are actually hungry, and it is around about lunchtime, or it is about supper time. So maybe that convinces you to then take action and visit that restaurant, because that's part of the attention. The exposure to the senses has happened. You've paid attention to it. Now you're interpreting it as maybe I have a need, and maybe I am hungry at this stage. So the way you interpret it is important to the marketer, because that was what they intended. That's why they have that nice smells and why they use particular colors and sounds, because the attention that people pay have to be well, sorry, let me rephrase that. You want them to pay attention to it, but even more importantly, you want them to interpret it in a manner that leads to action. And they will interpret it if they if they have a need for that particular product or service at that point. We know that consumers use selective interpretation more often than we would like to believe, or more often than we would actually like as marketers. And it's their choice. It is their choice to interpret it in a way that benefits them. There are, however, distortions as a result of incorrect interpretation. You misunderstood it. You thought it was a different product as to the one that is advertised. As a matter of fact, in some cultures in Africa, they found it challenging because consumers didn't buy Black Cat peanut butter. And after doing proper research, they realized that people actually didn't buy it because they thought they were pieces of a black cat in that jar. Regardless if it said peanut butter, it's Black Cat peanut butter, and it was actually completely misunderstood. And as a result of that, people didn't buy that product. That can happen because there are two ways in which a message can be distorted. It's done either through labeling, and that is where the individual ignore an important piece of information, or the marketing message that simply becomes more acceptable because they can actually relate to it. And then you also have your sharpening process where the customer reads additional information into the message, so it actually turns out the way that they want it. They add their own little their own little pieces to the commercial to almost sort of justify why they have to decide to take that or to buy that particular product, or take action and buy that particular product. Now, we all know that there's a lot of confusion, and from the video link that I've included on the bottom right-hand side of the page, which refers to the movie Mr. Bean, where he, as a not so worldwide wise individual, visited America and was exposed to a certain gesture that included the use of the middle finger. He used it because his interpretation of that was that it's actually a form of a greeting, which I suppose it is, but it's definitely not a kind one. It reflects on the importance of using signs and symbols to reach a greater part of the population, because sometimes people using certain signs and symbols will help in parts where you are visiting and you cannot understand that language because you're not from that area. Let's have instance of you, if my first day in France, I tell you what, if I wouldn't know if there wasn't that well-known sign of the male and the female indicating where the toilet facilities were, I wouldn't have known where to go, because if they just used the French words for male and female toilets, then I would still be standing there looking for the right place. So it is very popular that, or it is very important for marketers to use signs and symbols very effectively in the message, and especially to bring the customer's attention to the message that they are trying to convey. I know for a fact that we all are guilty of this. We do not remember everything that we hear and see. I know, for instance, with a teenage son and a college student as my two siblings that live under my roof, I have to repeat myself 3 times because very often they only hear the first part of a sentence and they hear the last part of a sentence. Yesterday, after my son wrote a 4-hour IT practical exam, on the way home, I chatted to him in the car, and his response was completely out of order. And I thought, okay, right. And he said to me, Dad, sorry, you know what? I didn't pay attention at all. I didn't hear what you're saying. I heard that you started talking, and then I heard that you finished talking, but I didn't hear anything at all because I wasn't paying attention to it. My eyes are still tired. I'm still tired after the exam. And I can understand that. And that is very true. And that our state of mind plays a role, yes, in why we pay attention and how much we remember of what we have paid attention to. But it is very true that even though you have been exposed to a certain message via a symbol or nice colors or a good smell, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to remember what everything is about. Very often, and I've tested myself with this as well, you immediately recognize a particular jingle of a commercial, but for the life of it, you can't remember who is advertising. That very often happens. And that's a very important message for future marketers to remember, that they must ensure that the product or the service that's being advertised, that you are trying to communicate to the customer, must be complete and not confusing, because people will pay firstly attention to only the things that's important to them, that interest them, that they have a need for at that moment and in a particular situation, and they will definitely not remember a lot of detail. If I ask you now what I said at the beginning of this session, you probably have to think very hard before you can actually reply, or you'll have to, when the session is finished, you'll probably have to look at the recording again, and then you realize what was said at the beginning of this session. People have very small attention spans, and therefore the important messages and the good experiences that we've had with a product or with a service provider, we store in our memories, and that's the one that we actually revert to when we make decisions. The good ones, not the bad ones. The bad ones we just block out, and it affects the decisions that we take, yes, but it does not it doesn't guarantee a future purchase. It might exclude a product from a range that you might have considered, but it's not going to necessarily impact on your decision. It will, my apologies, impact on your decision because you're excluding certain items. Memory and recall, important because it recalls the things that is important to you or that has been positive experiences in the past. As a marketer, your main objective is to ensure, and that's why some companies use repeated advertisements and commercials. At some point, I think last year during lockdown, I was so fed up with assurance, because every single time there's a break between programs, it's an assurance ad, it's an assurance ad, it's an assurance ad. Well, why are we talking about this at this moment? Because it stuck with me. It's in my memory. I recall that. It might have been an irritation, but I'm pretty sure that if I'm in the market for one of the products that they offer as an insurer, I'm going to remember the 086 number and I'm going to give them a call. So it is very important, those repeated commercials and repeated messages, because that puts your product and your company in the front of the memory bank of a consumer, and that's almost a sort of a default go-to, and that's what you want for then you know that your message has been conveyed successfully. Anybody, any questions at this stage? No questions? You're all still good? You're all still alive? Anybody that joined late in the session and didn't get the message regarding the assignment submission? Anybody that wants to ask at this point questions related to that? Nobody? Right. It's very important to understand the perception of the consumer, because it's an essential guide in marketing, and there's a number of areas in which an understanding of perception is very, very useful. We're going to be looking at the retail strategy, brand image, and price, and as a quality cue in particular, the first being the retail strategy. Retailers used to provide very effective exposure inside the store, shelf positioning, for instance. I know that they very often use the overhead signs in the aisles. I know we're talking specifically about retail shops. For the convenience and for the guidance of customers through their shops. I know that the layout in the stores have also been a very important factor. At some point, and I'm not sure, I can't recall which of the retail companies were the first ones to do that. But when you're queuing at the till to pay for your purchases, all of a sudden they started stacking up products that you might not have considered and was definitely not on your shopping list. But because you are waiting in the queue and you're looking left and right and you see it and you look away and you look at it again, you eventually actually pick up one of those items. And I think Woolies were one of those that made you queue through the sort of the line that snakes through these shelves, leading to the till that you're going to eventually pay at, has been very successful. I know that later on they still do that. The layout hasn't changed because it's a good strategy to follow. But I also know that they've removed certain items from those aisles because they say that all the items that were there were sort of not luxury items, but it was chocolates and more unhealthy products that people then don't really have a need for, but that they purchase because they are queuing, and while they are queuing, they're exposed to it, and as a result of that, they decide to buy it. I'm not an impulsive buyer. To be honest with you, maybe I was earlier in my life, but I'm definitely not at the moment. I know I need new glasses. I know I need my eyes tested. So I will go to the nearest shopping mall that has a branch of the particular supplier that I want to use for my new glasses. And I will go in, I'll have the eyes tested, I'll choose a frame and whatever, and I'll go out. I'm not going to be affected by any of the other razzmatazz that happen in that particular mall. At the moment, that's just where I am in my life, but I know that there are many consumers who are exactly the opposite and who are quite easily tempted. And that's why your retail strategy of positioning and layout of a shop, and it doesn't just stop with what's happening inside. It also the outside and the security and the parking or accessibility to parking is also very important and plays a very important role. of where you want to purchase. I know for a fact when I was way back, I think I just started working after finishing my studies. I stayed in a place, I rented a place up in Jonkershoek, the back of the Landsrijk Hotel in Stellenbosch, and there was a Pick n Pay shopping mall about 2 kilometers from where I stayed. So it was very convenient and close, but I hardly shopped there because of the layout. There was always issues with parking. You were always struggling to find parking. The layout of the shop wasn't very user-friendly, in my opinion. And I always drove extra 5Ks to another shopping center where I always found parking, regardless of what time of day I went there. That sort of almost sets the mood. And then if the layout inside the shop actually complements that, it's a win-win. All part of retail strategy. The image of a product, or the image that that the consumer have of a product in their minds, is probably more important to its ultimate success than the actual characteristics sometimes. I know that we have a particular image of a particular brand in our minds, and that definitely plays a very important part in making a decision as a customer. For marketers then to try and position their brands in such a way that the brands are perceived by the customer to fit a specific niche in the market is very important and is very clever. Products specific attributes are also stressed in a particular commercial, for instance, and they claim that the products will fulfill the needs better than the competitors will. And I know that First for Women specifically is not necessarily in competition with other insurance companies, but they have targeted a specific niche market. It says First for Women. I can't phone First for Women and say, can you give me a quote for my I want an insurance quote from you. They're going to say, unfortunately, you need to be female. It's actually quite clear in how our brand is positioned. It's First for Women. It's First for Women only. So the brand image is extremely important. I'm not sure how many of you, and I know that from previous chapters, we've identified that Gen Zs and millennials are both very brand conscious. Would you categorize yourself as anybody? I mean, what do you think? I mean, is wearing a specific brand very important to you or not? Or using a specific brand? Or I only buy from a specific shop because I support that brand, and I support the brand because of the image that particular company, in my opinion, has. Does that play a role, or don't you rather, is that not an important attribute for you at this stage? Anybody? I don't want to identify anybody in particular, but anybody? How important is using a particular brand and supporting a particular brand for you, or is it not important in your life at the moment? Anybody? Zandra, you always have a very nice contributions to make. I mean, is brand image important to you? Is it important for you to use a specific brand more than anything else, or you're not that brand conscious? Yes, Zandra? Can anybody? I know we had some issues this morning sometimes with the feed. And Chant, is anybody can everybody hear me? Can anybody give me an indication that there's not?
We can hear you. It's just most of us answers in the chat.
Okay. No problem at all. I've figured out this morning how I can actually split the screen so you can still see the PowerPoint, but I can also continue with the chat on
Hello, sir.
Hi, Yanni. How are you doing?
I'm alright. Sorry, I'm struggling getting the mic to work.
It's okay.
Okay. Personally, I would say I love All-Star Converse. So I really like their shoes, but I only have like 2 pairs because they last.
They are expensive.
Yeah, that too. But I think I want to say the younger millennials, zillennials, whatever, we are more brand loyal towards technological things like our cell phones. You know, you have Samsung, you have Apple, and you're either team Android or team Apple. You know,
Android or iPhone. Yeah, you're quite right. Yes, definitely.
You don't mix those, and I think that is probably the biggest brand thing that we have.
Would you if, in other words, based on your experience with a particular brand, I'm not going to go Android or iPhone. You can actually you can share that if you want to, as to what your preference are. But would you say therefore that because of your experience with a particular brand, let's say the iPhone, if Samsung brings out an Android that has all the same features and functions, you'll still stay with the Apple, even if the Samsung might be a bit cheaper, purely because you remain loyal to that brand, because you know what the brand has given you thus far, and you expect that that's going to continue with your new generation phones?
I would actually. I think that is almost what's nice, or it can be a nice thing or it can be a bad thing, is you have like what's it like, the cloud on an iPhone.
Yes.
I know they have one for Samsung now, I think, as well, with Google. But it just makes upgrading from an older iPhone to a newer iPhone easier than from iPhone to a Samsung or Samsung to an iPhone. You know, there's always going to be, I want to say, difficulties with that transition, because you don't have all the Android, I want to say, apps available, or all the Apple apps available on a Samsung. You know, so there's a lot of differences almost in that way.
It almost sort of supports the argument that customers very often, because of the convenience that they are used to, are not necessarily going to change to a different supplier because they are familiar with the product that they are using. And in this case, we're talking phones. We're talking about different menus. So when I converted from and I've had Samsungs my whole life. I was an Android person up to about, I would say, 4 years ago, and by default, my phone was broke. It fell, and it was still a couple of months until I can upgrade. And I wasn't going to go through it wasn't a new phone. It was at the end of a 2-year contract, so I wasn't going to go through the insurance issues or whatever. And I thought, you know what, I'll just wait. And somebody gave me an iPhone to use in the interim. And when I upgraded to iPhone because I got used to the new menu and I liked some of the features, and some of the features I never used on my Android. Actually, I had to pay for on Apple. Therefore, it was a benefit to me, because very often a product includes certain attributes that you never use, but you're actually paying for them. I'd much rather than only have something that offers something that I need and want, and then for that odd occasion I need something else, then I'll just purchase the additional function. So yes, I can completely understand. But I will, again, at this point, my phone is due for update now. I'm definitely going to stay with what I currently use, and it's for me more convenience decision than anything else. But you're quite right. Yes, people will stay with items that give them pleasure and that they are familiar with. Right. Let's see. We also have price as a quality cue. Now, we also know that, and a lot of people who shop at Woolies, for instance, say, I only shop at Woolies and I only buy my stuff there because the quality of their products is so much better. Very often it is because they are more pricey that people purchase there, because they associate a higher price with a better quality. When Jacobs Coffee, for instance, launched in South Africa, they launched themselves as a high-priced coffee, and they cornered a certain section of the market, and they converted Nescafe users, for instance, to buy a more expensive coffee like Jacobs, because they did not mention that they are higher, they just mentioned that they are better quality. Because the price then was also higher, people made that association. And to be honest with you, I think it's a very clever strategy, and it's not going to work for every product though. You have to be able to back it with quality products. You can't just make that claim and then people at the end of the day say, oh, I'm not going to buy that. It tastes exactly the same as other coffee, but it's actually much more expensive. So it has to also, although initially there's a perception that a higher price equates to a better quality, you have to offer something different that makes them believe that it actually is true and that it is of a better quality. It might not be, but they just have to perceive it to be. Right, we all know that, I mean, we learn from different people in our lives, and our processes and how we learn is very much different. Our perceptions, our needs, our motives, our attitudes, all directly or indirectly determined and influenced by our ability for the consumer to learn. We form our perceptions, we learn it, we learn it from different people, and we've seen in previous chapters that there are technical learning, and there is informal learning, and there's formal learning. You learn from your family, you learn from your peers, and you learn from your teachers. They are all different. That's the chapter on referencing that we addressed this. Those are all different forms of learning. And the learning experiences determine the products that the customers will buy, and more importantly, why they prefer a particular product. If you've used a particular product, you're used to that product, you've learned how to use that product and how valuable that product is because of your own personal experience with it. It will definitely impact positively in you buying that product again when you need it in future. The two main types of learning that happen is experimental learning, where the individual experiences something which causes a change in their behavior, either positive or negative. We experience it, we learn from it. If it's a good experience, it means that, oh, fantastic, I will use it again because I had a positive experience. If it was not a good experience, the exact reverse is true. I will not buy that product again. I will not go back to that restaurant again because I had a bad experience. And that's how we learn. We know that from very early on. You can ask your children and you can warn your children, do not touch the stove plates because they are hot. What do 9 out of 10 do? They try it and they want to test and see if it's actually true. You learn from experience. People don't listen, they want to learn. They don't want to be told, they want to learn. And that's the best way, I think, through experience of finding what benefits you the most, and based on that, the perception is formed. It's the image that's stuck in your memory, and that's what you're going to recall when you have to purchase the same product again. We also have conceptual learning, and in this case, you do not experience it yourself. It is basically converted through word of mouth or storytelling. In other words, a friend of your, you want to go to a restaurant because you want to take your family out, and you ask a friend of your, have you recently gone out? What places can you recommend? Or people have experienced or had a good experience at a particular restaurant, and now they share that with you as their friend. I'm not going to tell my friends, I'm going to warn them if my experience was bad not to go to that place, but it's up to them to still decide to go and experience it for themselves. But people often listen to those warnings, and then also, if the experience has been a good one, the message carries very quickly. However, bad experiences with a product or a service provider, that message is spread much quicker. Bad news travels faster. It does. Any of you recently experienced something positive yourselves that you learned something from? Or negative, so you can avoid it in the future? So to recap, basically, types of learning that happen for customers is through experimenting, through their own experiences, and then also conceptually through referrals by other people, through word of mouth, telling you about their experiences at a place, and based on that, you now are going to try it yourself. Your experience might not be the same as theirs, but you are going to make your decision to try it based on the word of mouth referencing that they have done. If we need to define customer learning, we can say that it's the process by which individuals acquire the buying and consumption knowledge and experience they apply to feature-related behaviors. Sorry, just a moment. Ek is op my laptop. Okay, sure. Sorry, people. Everybody's still there? You're still fine? You're still alive? You're still good? Oh, it's a slow Thursday today. What happened? Yes, as I said, the learning process is actually a process that is a continuous process, and it changes all the time. Because we are exposed to new things. We only know what we know until you're exposed to something new, and then based on that, you will change your behavior. The more knowledge you obtain, and that's why I'm actually glad that one of my sons reads a lot, because I can see that he is more knowledgeable because he reads a lot, and he's also the one who changes his preferences as to I'm talking household goods that we buy for food that we buy. He's the one that that experiments more than his older brother, because he's more knowledgeable and he's got a greater hunger for knowledge, and therefore he I think gathers more information, and because you gather more information, you've got more options to choose from, and based on that you experiment more as well. There's one thing that I think from that example we can also take, and that is that no individual learns the same things, nor do they do it at the same speed and in the same way. I've used an example of building a puzzle, for instance. We all can build a puzzle, we all have built a puzzle, but we've all used different ways of building that puzzle. We have different methods in which we complete the building of a puzzle, for instance. The basic elements of learning. The basic elements of learning is the stimulus, the response, and then also reinforcement. I think at this point, however, because we've got a couple of minutes still left, it's definitely not going to be sufficient for us to go through all these three elements in detail. So I think let's wrap this for today and allow me the opportunity to follow up with my chat I had this morning with Canvas support, and then I can post an announcement for you regarding the submission of your assignment. Okay, is that good for everybody? All good?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. As I said, I'll be in touch with you through an announcement. Relax. I can just in conclusion remind you that your term test, your formal test online quiz is going to happen next Tuesday, the 13th of April. It will be on, we are currently on chapter 7, so we'll cover, I think, in the test, chapters that we've done thus far, 1, 4, 5, and 6, I think. I will also post an announcement regarding that. That's just to remind you about the formal test next week. And again, as I said on Tuesday, the test itself, and I'm going to repeat this now because I think it was said after the session is finished on Tuesday, sorry. It's an online quiz that's available the whole day. The quiz is available the whole day. You can actually start with it already in the middle of the night. So it's back to our hard lockdown initial online assessments from last year. It's available the whole of the 13th. At any point, it's a 2-hour window in which you can do it once you've started. The same applies as last year. I will include in my announcement, which is basically a reminder about your formal test next week, the new number that you can phone if there are any emergencies, a computer that crashes, internet issues like that. Not about the paper itself, obviously, but if you have any technical issues like that while you're conducting the exam, I will include that 0860 number that you can phone, which is not the same number as last year. That's why I'm going to include it in the announcement. Okay, it's all good for everybody. There's no surprises. It's not a difficult test. It's an easy one. Really, yeah, I have to admit. I didn't set the paper. I just moderated it. It's not a tough paper at all.
And so that's on everything we've done till now.
Everything that we've done, but excluding the chapter we are busy with.
Okay, thank you.
No problem at all. I will just in the announcement again refer to specifically what will be covered and what you have to exclude. But it is on Canvas during that overview week that we have on our module schedule in the assessment guide. But I will just from the assessment guide, I'll just copy and paste it into the announcement. So you just go to the announcement and read the not the exam instructions, but read the important aspects, like what do I have to study and what do I have to. That's the most important thing. Which chapters are we going to assess you on? But it's all the work that we've done thus far. Yes. All good, everybody. Right. Behave yourselves. Make good decisions. and enjoy the weekend, because that's obviously between now and when we talk again next week. Thank you very much. Any issues you have, just drop me a mail. Okay? We'll chat via announcements sometime during the course of this afternoon. Thank you, everybody. Keep well.